Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. After a year, everything being slowed down, things being delayed, the Demon Slayer Mugen Train movie is here, and ooh, it was worth the wait. That was a fun movie. Now, those of you who've been watching the channel for a while know that I'm a fan of Demon Slayer. Like My Hero, it is one of the recent anime that definitely gets slotted into my favorite animes list. Marathon watched the show on Hulu, even though it was a sub and not the dub. If you guys already know my thoughts on that. Did my video essay style review of it last year. Got a pretty good amount of views. Then when I marathon watched the dub, once it became available, I did my own video giving my little thoughts on the dub. Some of the changes I noticed that I don't remember happening in the original. Thoughts on the voice choices. Well, now that we have this film out, it's time to review the Mugen Train. Now, one of the first little interesting bits to talk about is the fact it's called Mugen Train, because the arc in the manga is called Infinite Train. Apparently that was changed to avoid possible legal issues with a Cartoon Network show called Infinity Train. Similar yet different, but I guess it's one of those things like, well, probably it could have brand confusion. That's just true. And for a movie title, I think Mugen Train is a little better, because it doesn't make you think, what the heck? And it's a bit accurate. I mean, it is a train on the Mugen route. For those of you not familiar with Demon Slayer, the plot of the show is that we have a teenager named Tanjiro. His entire family, with the exception of his sister Nezuko, are slaughtered by demons. Nezuko herself is turned into a demon, and the goal of the show is for Tanjiro to find a way to turn her back into a human. And to do that, he joins the Demon Slayer Corps under the tutelage of a former water Hashira. He passes, and he's journeying with Zenitsu, who is a little bit of a coward, but he does have his moments of bravery, usually when he's passed out, who studied under the Thunder School, and Inosuke, who is a wild man wearing a boar's head, who has a chaotic wild style. They're their little group, they're journeying, and throughout the entire first part of the anime, it's them meeting, them fighting lower class demons, and them fighting their first upper class demon, even though from what we find out he's technically a lower class when it comes to being the lieutenants of the big baddie. And with this movie, they're going to deal with the last of the lower rank ones, because the end part of the first season deals with the herd being thinned, as it were. Culled, to use the proper phrase. And now they're going from one place to another. They're going to be teaming with the Fire Hashira, Rengoku. And they got to deal with this demon who uses sleep, which allows for some creative scenes once the characters do fall asleep. My favorite is probably Inosuke's dream, because he's imagining he's in charge and everyone else is his minions. And of course Bryce Peppenbrook in the dub doing the voice work. My minions! I got a good chuckle out of me just watching all that combined with it. The animation on the film is beautiful. It has the same type of style as the show, but there's enough of a change to where you can definitely tell they had extra money to work with for a theatrical release. And for that, I got to applaud director Haruo Sotozaki. He's experienced. He was the animation director for the show, so we have that little bit of continuity going. He also worked on Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and he was an animator on the Cowboy Bebop movie. So it shows he knows how to go from both TV into a film thing. So nice little bit of continuity there. Makes it look excellent. I didn't really notice any moments that were like, eh. I noticed a couple moments where they did use CGI to help with the animation, mainly when it came to the big baddie's transformation with the train towards the end. But nothing really bad. And of course, you know, they're adding CGI into the stuff now. I mean, look at the last few Dragon Ball movies. There are a couple moments of movement where they put CGI over the cells, but I think it adds a little bit. The only negative thing you could really say about it is that in the words, I believe it was Kirk Hammett who said it, it's gonna bring it all and make it stand out to this point in time. I know I got the quote messed up, but I think you got it. Of course, if they keep using it, it's probably just going to say this is when it started and it kept going forward, and they only stopped at this point because they ran out of CG. The only negative thing I can really say about the film is that the ending does drag just a tad, and part of that stems from the fact that unlike other films we usually see, to where it's a side story that's canon like the Cowboy Bebop one, or it's a what if like most of the Dragon Ball ones, to where they're fun but you can't really fit them in, and also most of them are pretty short so they don't really have the time to drag. It is an adaptation of one of the arcs, going to be set in between this and the second season, which I'll talk about that in a second. And since it is following what happens in the manga, the reactions of what happens in the last part of the third act, it does tend to make this denouement part drag. I mean, I understood it, but I'm sitting there going, okay, this is a slow part. It's like a nitpick, like a minor thing, and it connects back to the opening part of the movie where we see the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps having some reminiscences by some graves. So it's a nice little connection between the opening and the ending. They're bookends, as it were. Now, not having read the manga to that point directly, because up on the shelf I only have the first 5, which, if I remember correctly, 5 only goes into like the middle part of the battle on the Spider Mountain. I gotta start collecting them again. So I don't know exactly how it's paced out between manga and anime. But I have a feeling in the page it probably doesn't seem as bad, because in a manga you could pace it out a little bit more, whereas on screen it might feel a little, I don't want to say intrusive, but it might feel like it overstays its welcome. The middle part of the movie didn't seem like it dragged. I mean, there were a couple parts where I'm like, alright, that's probably where one chapter ended and another began. But it didn't feel as bad as when I was watching Stardust Crusaders for the first time, and I'm like, that's where chapter end, that's where chapter end, that's where chapter end, that's where chapter end. Where it's like, you could, with that season of JoJo, you could take a shot every time you do it, you'd end up drunk probably after the first 10 episodes. Probably 5 if you really want to be realistic. But I'm just being a little conservative with that. But it's like, well, at least I wasn't able to notice it as well. The whole thing about him taking over the train and fusing with the train, nice little creative thing, makes it a lot harder to fight, because then it's like, it's all around you. Did have some good character moments, like Zenitsu waking up to defend Nezuko. I do love the little bit of seriousness to comedy there. I mean, the whole fandom's making a joke out of it, because we all know that those two do end up together in the end. Unlike the video essay, I can actually say that, because the manga has ended since then, so that's a little spoiler for those who didn't know. They actually do end up together. People, the joke has been that's when she fell in love with him. And then, of course, when he does the little fall asleep thing, and the comedic reaction, like, I fell in love with this thing? She doesn't really say anything, because Nezuko doesn't really have any lines when she's in her demon form. She has inner monologues, but it is kind of funny. She does have lines in the dreams, though, especially Zenitsu's dream, which, given what I'm talking about, you can imagine what it is. It is what you would expect from his type of dream, just like Tanjiro has the typical dream that ties into my whole thing about what if being the 2 most dangerous words. And, of course, how he figures out how to get out of it is pretty creative. And they have to keep spamming it throughout the fight, because, uh-oh, he's going to keep casting it. It's like if you're doing an RPG and the bad guy keeps spamming one of their techniques that's annoying, and then can put you in a precarious situation if all of you get cast in it, and you got to do something to undo it. Like sleep, for instance. Let's say all three of your characters get put in sleep. It's like you got to wait for them to wake up. Pokemon, even, it's bad if they keep using sleep powder or something like that. Like, you son of a... I gotta use to wake them up, so I gotta waste a turn. Dang it! Now, for the third arc, I knew something emotional was going to be coming, but the way I kept hearing about it, it's made it sound like it was going to be like, ha-ha, I'm one of the upper ones, ha-ha. But it's a lot sadder than that. The comparison that I thought of after the movie was over was that the sadness of this part involving Rengoku and his death, I know, minor spoiler, but I gotta mention it in order to talk about it, was like the ending of Crisis Core, where you know throughout the entire game that Zack is going to end up dead by the game's end. You just don't know how they're going to execute it. And then when you get to that scene in CG, you got, not only does he die, but you got to play through it, and you got constantly respawning enemies until you hit a certain part, and then it's like the cutscene plays and it's like, oh, there was only 3 left. Dang. And then see what happens. His fight with Akaze of the Upper Moon 3, oh my, it hit that one. And to add to it, Akaze is constantly trying to get him to turn into a demon throughout the fight. And the animation on the fight looks beautiful. It's a good thing to actually see what a battle between upper demons and upper Hashira would look like. I mean, Rengoku was doing a pretty good job against the train and all that, but that's a very situational foe where he'd have to think, and he's also defending people, whereas this is a bit more straightforward. It's one-on-one. To use the LARP phrase, it's player versus player, so no outside interference, so it's just you versus you. He might be a little exhausted from the other fight, but he's still holding his own, especially since he's going through all of the different forms of the fire school. And Akaze he's that close to getting it, but he manages just to slip. Just shows how dangerous these upper moons can be, especially since they haven't changed in centuries, and they've killed many Hashira, unlike the lower moon before they were disbanded in the show, and then of course this one getting killed. And to add to it, Lucen Dodge, I think, does a pretty good voice for Akaze. I looked up, this is not his first character he's voiced in Demon Slayer. He previously voiced Kazumi, who was the guy whose fiance got eaten by those other demons. He voices Zoisite in the Sailor Moon Viz dub. And he voices Simon in Seven Deadly Sins and Blue in Pokemon Origins. I remember his Zoisite voice a little bit. I can't really think of it off the top of my head, but it's been almost 2 years since I watched that part of it, and I haven't watched Crystal yet, so next time I watch through it, I'll be like, oh, yeah, that's him. Those are all the things he's done of major note, but he's done some other ones like background voices, so it's nice to see him be able to do a more important character. I mean, Zoisite's important, but what amongst four? The sadness at the end, it does drag a little bit as well. That's part of the thing I mentioned before about the ending dragging a bit, whereas they could have cut down on it, but we get a lot of lines like Inosuke trying to act like it's not affecting him while he's trying to get the others to calm down, and he's accepting his death with grace, but you could tell it's upsetting him too, which I think is a nice little character moment. Although a couple of the people to my right were like, what's with all this crying? So they were seemed to be a little turned off by it, so it does drag a little bit because of that. Who knows, it might be something that's only a couple panels on the manga, but then when it comes to the screen, they had to make it seem a little bit longer in order to get all the lines in. That's the interesting thing about looking from page to screen. Now, this film is one of the highest grossing animated films of all time, especially in Japan. And it actually passed Spirited Away in December 2020, and it has a gross of $428.4 million. Now, worldwide, there's going to be a lot of Disney films that outshine it, but for an animated film, especially an R-rated animated film, which I will say this film definitely does deserve its R rating at points, that's good. And apparently it's also the highest grossing R-rated animated film of all time, because previously, I can't really think off the top of my head many rated R animated films. Meaning there's ones like, I know there's that one with the cat. I can't remember. That one's very niche, and there's probably a couple others, like both heavy metal films, but I don't think they made that much. But it's more like a very niche one, because you know how a lot of people are, oh, it's animated, it must be for kids. And they put their kids in front of it, and their kids will be like, Mommy, what's that? And they're like, oh, I can't believe they included nudity in an animated film. When they forget it's a medium and doesn't automatically equate kids. Thankfully, that's a stigma that seems to be going away. At least it seems to be a big thing in America. I don't know. Of course, probably be kept in some places like the Bible Belt, but we'll see how that goes. But nice to see it actually made its money pretty good. And that gross is where we're going to get the second season from, which they did announce it, which I'm looking forward to it. We're going to pick up right at the end of this. And a little aside, I really wouldn't mind them adapting, not only for Demon Slayer, but for other animes, shorter arcs like this into animated films. Because it makes it a little different. It doesn't make it seem like you got to watch the entire show to get to an arc you like or an arc you recommended. You can just pop in the film. And with how the movie begins, you don't have to have watched the previous arc in order to get into it. So it does avoid that one anime film trope to where they start you and plop you right in, where they might give a minor explanation, but it's more like you have to be a fan or have some pre-existing knowledge in order to understand what's going on. I mean, even with the Americanization of the first couple Digimon movies, they kind of plop you in there. They give you that short explanation, but they never fully explain everything. Here, there's enough at the beginning that you could get right on with that. But if you want to know the full story of what's going on, you still got to watch the anime. All in all, Demon Slayer was a pretty fun film. Definitely going to pick it up once it hits home video. I haven't heard anything on that front. As of the time I'm recording this, it is still in theaters. Or I know definitely around where I am it is. Other places it may vary. I'm debating whether to go see it for a second time, but if I do, you'll probably see a post up on here saying about it. If I do, I'm still debating whether I'll see the sub this time so I can get a full view of it, or wait until it hits video to look at the sub. Animation, I said, is beautiful. The voice work on the dub is pretty good. I didn't really think any of the voices didn't fit. It's like most of them, though, were coming in from the anime of the main characters. The minor characters, it suited it. Definitely deserves to have made all this money, and I look forward to the second season when it premieres. And when it does and it completes, you will see a video essay review of that one. Until next time, guys.